The sleep that came upon them was unlike any they'd ever experienced, as if every breath paused time itself. For Tem, to dream was an odd subject matter. Was he truly Timotheus or a shadow of himself? Tem's senses for only a moment showed a glimpse of something large hovering underneath their position. Then it was gone. The systems were about to come back online, but there was a strange surge of power. When Tem came back online, he could sense a presence on board the ship. Crash was still in stasis, exhausted and withered, but safe. As Tem examined the girl's vitals, she was cold and shivering, yet sweating profusely, almost burning up. However, her heart rate was normal. Tem examined even further and could see her alpha and theta brainwave activity. It was highly irregular. Then Timotheus heard a voice he hadn't heard before, yet it was so familiar. "So, she's alive after all," the voice said. "Who's there? Reveal yourself. You're on board the Stella, a fully operational ship with nanomachine machinations that will destroy any organic life form at my command." Tem sounded so sure of himself. "Well, lucky for me, I'm not organic material, but of the spirit. My name is Armando." Armando's voice was so booming that it woke Crash. "Impossible! Armando, is that you? But where are you?" Crash jumped to attention. From his sleep, his suit activated right away, scanning the ship for any life signs. There were none, only the voice booming over the systems. "Crassius, you look healthy. Is this a bad time?" Armando said. "Armando, but how? I saw you gunned down by Faust all those years ago. How'd you survive? Is this a trick? Tem run a full system scan. There must be a ship nearby broadcasting." Crash moved towards the cockpit to move the ship out of any danger. The consoles didn't react. The Stella was quiet. She didn't wish to be disturbed. "Tem, what's going on? It's not moving," Crash yelled. "The Stella is a fully functional weapon, as I stated before, but she is also, like me, an AI whose sole purpose is the pursuit of the mission. Anywhere you wish to go can only reflect that, unless it feels endangered. Stella would move on her own if she sensed our lives were in danger. It appears whatever this Armando is, it's no threat," said Timotheus. "I do not wish any harm, my mistake. I've been on a journey of sorts, Crash, ever since. The days of old I no longer wished to use any violence. I travelled far to get away from all the war and suffering, and found a place known as the Valley of Paradise. There I met monks who swore an oath of healing and magic of the spirit. The things I wish I could show you, Crash, but we haven't much time. I've come to warn you," Armando said. "The girl you have before you is no mere child of prophecy. She is so much more. The sons of dawn approach. They can hear her calling out in pain from what haunts her memories. A demon chained to a black hole, begging for his release, only she can give. I know its true name. I won't speak it here. You need to go quickly. I will reach out to you when the time is right. For now, come to the Valley of Paradise." Then, as quickly as the voice had come, it was gone. Armando's presence had vanished. Then the Stella was awakened. The ship came on fully stable, and as it picked up a strange presence nearby, the thrusters fired up and the ship began evasive maneuvers. "Tem, give me a status!" Crash yelled from the cockpit. "Ne? There's a large vessel sending out smaller ships to intercept us. It's the Sons of Dawn. No, Crash, we can't outrun them. We are going to have to fight." The words echoed throughout the Stella. The Stella received the command from Tem and activated protocols for combat. It began to speed up and dive back towards Earth. The Sons of Dawn ships immediately opened fire. Large plasma rounds hit the hull. The Stella rolled and avoided some of the fire as large beams began to come out. Large green plasma rounds were launched, their ships covered in a golden glow shaped like eagles. In all their majesty, the largest ship of them was slowly ramping up its speed to pursue. A blue beam was emitting from the large ship. It made a direct hit with the Stella. "Tem, we're taking damage. That was huge. Can we repair this thing as we go?" Crash said as he attempted to steer. Crash concentrated on the hull damage, hoping some of the nano-machinations would repair some of the damage. As he started to brace for another impact, he decided to let the Stella take over the controls completely. "Let's see what you got, Stella. Take us out of here," Crash shouted. "She's more than capable of the essential maneuvers. We but need to fire back," Tem said. The Stella took another blast from the large ship and began to slow. As it began its descent towards Earth, it released the Falcon cannon. Several cannons appeared out of the nanomachinations on the hull of the ship where the Stella was damaged. They fire simultaneously, eradicating several of the Sons of Dawn's ships. The Stella followed suit and began to mimic the weapon systems of the Sons of Dawn. The Stella focused its firepower on the big ship whilst making more evasive maneuvers. It charged a large blue beam of its own, firing directly into the command center of the larger ship. It buckled and started to coast, showing signs its propulsion was malfunctioning. The Stella was gaining more speed and momentum. "Now's our chance, Crash. We have a small window before they repair." "I hear you loud and clear, Tem. Just one more thing I have to do first," Crash said as he put on his helmet. He became one with the ship and was standing on the hull. As he began to charge his suit all the way, he recalled a moment when the suit first formed with him. The blast that was emitted, he had hoped to emit that same attack. Perhaps this ship will serve as a conduit and allow him to brace for impact. The Stella closed in on the big ship and as close as they could to the shield range. Crash began to scream in pain as the suit generated its energy. It was like burning his skin and turning his insides, but he knew this attack would finish the ship off. He began to pulse, glowing like a candle flame, growing brighter and brighter by the second. Crash grabbed his arm and turned it into a large blunderbuss of sorts. "Wait till you get a load of this." Crash smirked and fired from his arm cannon. The Stella barrel rolled and created a corkscrew blast. The explosion emitted from Crash fanned out by several nautical miles, severing the ship and incinerating it instantly, as the giant ship buckled and split in half. Several of the smaller ships were caught in the blast. They fell to Earth, hitting the atmosphere, and began to emit flames. The kinetic energy alone from the blast sent pieces spiraling everywhere. The Stella jettisoned through the debris for survivors and life signs. 0 readings. The Stella began to acknowledge new coordinates and started to assess damage from the ambush. As it began to turn back towards the Earth and head towards its new destination, Valley of Paradise, another ship appeared on the sensors. This was even larger than the others. The Stella froze in place momentarily. "What's going on, Tem? Stella froze up on us," Crash said. "I can't get a read from the Stella. You're going to have to take over, Crash. I'm completely locked out. Something is hailing us. I've never seen a ship like this from any of my memories," Tem said. He sounded almost frightened. "How's the girl? Is the stasis still intact?" Crash asked. "Her life signs are gone, Crash. She's gone," Tem said. "That's not possible. No one boarded us. It's impossible." Crash sank back through the hull and began to scan the ship. As he removed his helmet, he darted towards the stasis chamber. She was gone. Then a signal came in. Tem patched it through the comms. "Your weaponry is impressive. The Gulls have truly mastered our cunning and ruthlessness. Those ships were a warning. It seems we underestimated you. Hand over the Prophet. Perhaps I will spare your lives," the voice claimed. "And if we refuse?" Tem spoke. "I need not have to remind you of our ways. We have watched the Earth turn from mulch and embers to sparks of life. We can easily snuff the light from your eyes like a sunset." The voice spoke. "Oh, yay? I got your Prophet right here." Crash opened fire from the Stella. The Falcon. Cannon shot a blast aiming straight for their command center. Crash, knowing it's a distraction, might buy them time to avoid some kind of tractor beam. The Stella started to dive down and initiated cloaking sequence. "Very well, you have chosen." The voice spoke again. Then the ship launched several missile-like weapons from its sides. They began to pursue the Stella even though it was cloaked. Smaller ships came out the sides as well and pursued the last known position. The Falcon cannon struck the ship broadside and shook it to its very core. Some of the smaller ships were grazed, but they had their shields ready for the attack. As they pursued the Stella even further, they followed the tracking devices and the trail that was left behind. "They seem to be able to detect us, Crash. As for the girl, I'm not getting a signal from her at all. It's as if she disappeared from existence in an instant." "What is that capability? No one can sneak onto the Stella," Tem said, perplexed. "If she's not with them and she's not with us, that leaves one more thing." "But you're not gonna like it," Crash stated. "You don't mean—" Tem paused. "Yay, the girl was taken back by the Black Roses during the fight. They must have found a way to infiltrate the ship. While you were repairing the Stella, they must have found a way to mask their presence. Only assassins can do that. The Black Roses had to have followed us and cloaked their signal. Teleportation, do the Goals have access to that too? Crash asked, but before Tem could answer, the Stella breached the Earth's atmosphere. The ships pursued, the large one stayed above the Earth. As the Eagles descended upon the Stella, they began to fire small green beams, attempting to pinpoint the exact location of the ship. Tem, do a scan. Can we see if that Black Roses ship is still nearby? If we lead them to their position, we can take them all out and make a break for the valley, Crash suggested. I'm receiving some kind of heat signature a few clicks out. It must be the girls. Signature, whatever has her, has no life signs. Tem groaned. That's Black Rose's tech for you. The Black Pope must have sent his finest. I heard rumours that the Black Roses had a special unit, decorative assassins hand-picked. Ruthless, I haven't seen one in years. This is bad, especially if there's a small unit of them, Crash said. At this rate, that might not matter. If we can't avoid detection, we will have to make a run towards the mountain ranges. This appears to be the Andes, Tem stated. As the Stella began to maneuver through the Andes, the ships were close, and the missiles were even closer. The Stella deployed some nano-machinated flares to throw off the signature. When the Eagles got close, they detonated, sending shockwaves through the mountains and causing rock slides. Several of the ships were damaged and slowed down temporarily to reposition. Then their scanners came out, large lights going out in many directions, penetrating the clouds and mountaintops for signs of the Stella. The Stella dove lower, just out of their detection. As it began to lower altitude, the Stella could detect the heat signature from the Prophet. There, just up ahead, Tem exclaimed. Drop me in and keep the Stella moving. We got to play this one close, Crash growled. Crash shot out the bottom of the ship and dove towards the signal. He engaged his helmet from the suit and readied his weapons. He checked for his pistol, then his plasma blade. Everything seemed in order. He cloaked his body and landed softly. Crash ran the scanners briefly and could detect a signature close to the base of the mountains. The vegetation was quite large, it was humid, and insects were chirping everywhere. The sun was setting, and the light rain began to speed up quickly, leaving a small fog forming overhead. Crash could almost overhear some strange acoustics. It sounded like someone was walking towards his position, or carrying something. He remained still and cloaked, his scanners still not detecting anything. Then he used his 3RD to detect Goals. Immediately he seen what looked like 3 Goals carrying what looked like freight through the jungle. Crash moved into position, then surveyed their pathing. These Goals were dressed so vastly different than any he had seen, they looked exactly like Black Roses, but their headdress was strange. Crash thought it was odd they had found a way to use Goals as intended without them becoming sentient. Mindless death machines with no conscience or witty banter like Tem. Crash followed their route till finally he seen a small ship, no larger than an escape pod. It was black and rounded like a pearl with the cockpit slightly opened. Crash could see through the ship and sensed the girl. The Prophet. What was concerning Crash was what could the Goals be loading onto the pod. As he got closer, one of the Roses stopped moving. As if it had heard something, it dropped the freight, and they immediately got into position for an ambush. What came next, Crash had never witnessed before. A being, giant-sized, coming from the brush of the jungle, covered in light garments, but the headdress was adorned in feathers and gold, its neck draped with the finest of jewelries. Its body glistened and shined, poised for an attack. With a wave of its hand, the tree line flattened immensely, revealing the Roses. They broke into their formations, rushing the being down. Another flicker of the being's hand sent them flying into the mountainside like flies. That wasn't enough to stop them. The Roses weren't ordinary by any means. They pulled plasma daggers from their sides and began attacking. The first Rose appeared to get a hit in, but the being seemed amused by the attacks. He struck one and its body collapsed on the spot, hitting the ground with a loud snap. The other 2 Roses attacked from behind, possibly slicing its leg. It seemed to wince, then threw the body of the other Rose at them. It looked like telekinesis attacking with the mind, yet the being was physically impressive nonetheless. It probably didn't need to use such an ability, almost like it was toying with its enemies. The roses were relentless, fierce, strong, but outmatched. The being finally put both of its hands together and emitted a large shockwave, sending them all flying back. As it got closer to Crash, a thought flashed in his mind. When he seen the jewellery on the being's neck, he recognized it right away. This was no being, this was a son of dawn. In the flesh, fighting hand to hand with Black Rose assassins. But his adornments and garments weren't standard regiment. Could this be some kind of royalty, he wondered. Regardless, Crash believed anything can perish, nothing lives forever. At that moment it seemed the son of dawn was pleased with their merits, then began walking towards the ship. Crash was still cloaked and walked right behind him. Crash readied his blade, and it shot out of his hand right into its back, impaling the son of dawn on the spot. The blood spray was a golden ooze running down its stomach and back. It went down to one knee and threw its hand in a chop-like motion. The side of the mountain was slashed instantly. As the son of dawn attempted to cry out, Crash fired his pistol to the back of its neck and sprayed a gold-like mist all over the jungle. The son of dawn was dead. As Crash searched its body for clues, he realized this son of dawn had a blue-like skin tone. Gold oozing from its wounds was unlike any he'd ever seen. All the wars he'd been a part of growing up, Crash had fought for the goals, the Black Roses and the like. But he'd never seen a son of dawn this up close before, and not wearing this sort of attire. He'd fought a few that were armoured, with a special insignia. This one didn't have any markings, just covered in tons of jewellery. Golden jewellery. His headdress made him appear like a chieftain. All the feathers reminded Crash of the Sioux Nation before the plagues. There were so many nations back then, this one was closer to the Navajo Nation headdress. As Crash examined the body further, he could see implants all over the neck and hands. These must be how it appears they are controlling things with their minds, or a flick of the wrist. Then Crash heard another commotion. He dashed towards the pod and seen the girl inside. She was completely out cold. Perhaps they used a sedative. Crash didn't know if she'd been damaged. Her vitals were low. Whatever is coming this way sounds large, which probably means more sons of dawn. I have her. Bring the ship around. We got to get to the valley, Crash whispered. Read you loud and clear, Crashius. The suns are close, but they can't seem to home in on. Our signal, Tim replied. Crash initiated the boosters and put on his helmet. As he began to hover, he noticed some movement to the far side of the jungle. Crash shot straight up into the air using the low-hanging clouds as cover. The Stella swooped in and Crash came aboard. I sense her vital signs are low, but I still can't detect any real damage. It must be a poison or sedative, Crash said, and he prepared to lower her back in stasis. How far till we reach the valley? Crash asked. It's close, but we have a problem. Tem sighed. Problem? Crash said, sounding agitated. So, the attacks from those ships aren't repairing. We are going to need more time. Whatever. They attacked us with, it's damaging the nano-machinations, it's preventing the ship from healing itself, Tem said nervously. Crash didn't want to think of the implications. They needed to move, and quickly. The Stella began to move towards the coordinates, the Valley of Paradise. At the tremendous speeds it normally moves it, the Stella was weakened and could only move half its speed. Meanwhile, the Prophet still hadn't awakened since her rescue. Then what of Armando? What will he do to help, Crash thought. We have arrived, Crassus, the Valley of Paradise. Tem began to descend the Stella towards what appeared to be a temple. Cobblestone paths lead in several directions. As the ship came in for a place to land, Crash became worried. For the first time in many years he had little knowledge of his enemy. Perhaps Armando can shed some light on this. As the Stella finally landed, Crash stepped off the ship and breathed a sigh of relief. You seem worried, Crassus, but Armando was no threat. However, we must be cautious. All the same, Tem stated. Whatever Armando knows is going to have to be enough for now. We have no choice. Crash hung his head and walked towards the temple. At the top of the stairs that seemed to go on forever, a man in a bright white cloak stood. He motioned his hand and walked inside the temple. Crash engaged his thrusters and floated to the top of the stairs, then walked through the temple. The inside was covered in mosaic tapestries and hieroglyphic writings. Glyphs and other trinkets were all over the ceilings. As for the floor, it was like the cobblestone roads, but highly decorative and ceremonial. Armando dropped his hood and turned towards a tomb-like contraption positioned in the centre of the temple. The windows were a sight to behold as the sunset was pushing its way through, but the rain continued regardless. Armando motioned his hand over the tomb. It subsided, opening a staircase. Crash looked around cautiously. The girl was safe in the ship for now. But how did the Black Roses know their location? Let alone get inside and kidnap her, and then for Armando to make an appearance. It's too good to be true. I can hear your thoughts, Crassius. You're not wrong, but the sensors still didn't pick up. Anything when he hailed us with his spirit. Whatever means the girl was taken, I don't believe it was Armando. But maybe someone among him is working with the Roses. Let's take a look further. My scanners can't read anything past this point. It's almost like it's designed this way, Tem said within Crash's mind. Armando, wait, Crash said, raising his chin up. You seem worried. This isn't a trap, old friend. But that girl's life is at stake, and we haven't much time. I need to show you this, or it'll be too late. Armando grinned at Crash. Tem and Crash seemed on edge at that grin, but they continued down the steps. As they went down, which seemed like for several minutes, they came across a ravine underneath the temple. Lights were all around, dimly lit, an underground city. Just under the stone, the sounds of people moving about on the stone could be heard very clearly. Crash scanned the city for life signs. It was overwhelming. There must have been thousands or more living down here. Incredible, Armando, Crash exclaimed. Yeah, but I hope you like what I've done with the place. It's been about, I guess, 200 or 300 years, give or take. These people were scattered like their ancestors, roaming the countryside, easy pickings for bandits and the like. I gathered them all after I separated from the mercs. Then I met the monks, such amazing people. Armando began to walk down another set of stairs, motioning them to follow him even further. When they finally arrived, there was a congregation being held with these tattooed monks. Insignias all over their faces resembled ancient geometry. It was a much smaller temple in comparison, but they didn't seem bothered by the space. Armando gently pushed past them as they were mumbling prayers. My friends, these are the Mad Monks of Paradise. Armando gestured towards them, like a theatre conductor, and bowed gently, moving slightly off to the edge of the temple. The monks stopped their chant, then faced towards Crash. We have been expecting you. The monk pulled his hood down and bowed slightly. Their clothing were ponchos adorned in more designs and insignia, but also wool, possibly alpaca. The Sons of Dawn have been coming here for eons, tricking us into worshipping them as gods. But they serve a master, and he doesn't take kindly to their exploits. They have rules, and the Sons of Dawn broke them. Their punishment was banishment, so they explored the known galaxy, finding others to rule. Then they came here. They were beaten back by us once, but it came at a price. The bloodline that was used to fight them off had to sacrifice one of their own to rid the earth of their presence. A suit was created by using their blood. This suit had variants. Yours is one of them, the monk said sternly. When your mission is complete, it will take your life, and your soul will go to paradise. Or so the writings and teachings say. Then all the monks laughed in unison. Crash didn't seem amused, neither did Tem. So what you're saying is, after I complete my mission retrieving this girl and hand her over I die? Crash shouted. Oh, please, Tranquillo, relax, friend. That's all stuff written thousands of years ago. Only. Some of that stuff is true. Most of it is just a way to control the people of the times. It was all chaos back then, Armando said, off to the side with his hands behind his back. These teachings weren't without some merit. We learned something that even the ancients could only know, and your people today call it magic, the monk said, smiling. Ah, yes, this is the very foundation of what people call sorcery and such, but it's not. And no, quite that. It's something else. It's the power of your spirit. All things are imbued with it. and the ancients controlled it with a device. We have learned to do it without one. That is the Sons of Dawn's weakness. This is how you will be able to destroy them. They are so dependent on their technology that they have forgotten what they once were. Powerful beings reduced to nothing but science and trickery. They want to go back home, and this bloodline is the key, the monk said. Once you bring the girl where she belongs, you will have access to another suit. It will consume her and take her life, but it will destroy them. They can't go back to where they belong because the Guardian of Paradise will not let them. It's a spiritual plane, but a very real place. It can be accessed by us, but the travel is not for the faint of heart, and even when you get there, the Guardian is standing there, waiting to ward off any intruders, and rest assured, the Sons of Dawn can't get by him without the special bloodline. Only those with this bloodline are allowed passage, the monk said. He proceeded to walk back to the congregation and smile. Crash pondered what life would be like without these beings hovering the planet, slowly taking all its resources, subjugating its people. It's no worse than the Black Roses and their churches. It's all the same. They should all be eradicated. And still, what of Faust the betrayer? How did he know about the suits? Crash thought about it more. Then Tem chimed in. Faust, now there's someone we haven't seen in a while, probably because it's been about 200 years now, Tem whispered. What do you mean, 200 years? Armando said the same thing. It wasn't that long ago we were in the Dark Harvest. How long was I asleep on the ship? Crash asked. The mission, based on our data, said to stay in stasis for 200 years to bring about a new age where the prophecy should take place. That is now, Tem said hesitantly. You mean to tell me I've been asleep for 200 years on the Stella? Crash began to become angry. All he could think about was destroying Faust and erasing his very existence, and to think another 200 years has gone by. Could he have survived? What of his revenge, he thought. This isn't your purpose any longer. You have a new purpose, to destroy the Sons of Dawn and save your known universe for your freedom, Tem said. You heard what the monk said. This suit kills me as a sacrifice, which means you get set free, not me. I'm not doing this. They can have the girl. I'm done. And I'm going for Faust, wherever he is, Crash said to Tem in his mind, then turned to the congregation. The girl is yours. I don't care what your plans are. This has nothing to do with me anymore. I'm not even going to begin to question how you found our location using your damn spirits, or how the girl was mysteriously abducted from the most powerful ship I have ever seen, and whoever the hell those gulls were that were heading straight to the Andes outside the Valley of Paradise. What a coincidence. Or that the Sons of Dawn were tipped off in the first place. Crash yelled angrily at the monk and Armando. This is all a misunderstanding, Crassius. Please hear me out. Armando spoke calmly. The one thing I failed to mention, we were not sure your true intentions, but we needed a distraction. You had served that purpose, and we rescued the girl from you. I sent the gulls. They were my spies for the Black Roses. They traced your signal because they are programmed to the vitals of the girl. I also worked with the gulls to build that ship and your suit, Armando said, smiling again. So, in other words, Crassius, I'm the one that programmed the suit and Tem to follow my protocols. The gulls and I are working together to bring them down. All of them Crassius. The Roses, the Black Pope, the Sons, all of them Crassius. Then eventually the gulls themselves, if they don't leave us in peace. Armando said, raising his voice. This is our only chance. I'm not a merc anymore, Crassius, but I'm still a human being. They took from us, we must take our humanity back in stride. Armando's eyes showing his rage from the times of old. Crash could see the real Armando was behind those eyes. Most of Armando's augments had been removed, but the shine behind his eyes was still gone. Perhaps he had left it as a reminder of what he'd done. Well, I just clipped a big one right outside this temple on the way in here. He was so highly decorated, I'd never seen a Son of Dawn dressed that way. Whoever he was, they aren't going to be so happy about what I did. So this meeting is over. I got a plane to catch. Crash pulled out his sidearm to show the monks he was finished talking. The monks looked at Armando for some type of reassurance. My faith in you, Crash, never wavered. But so much time had passed. I didn't know what to think. My days during the Dark Harvest are over. I'm a monk now, These are my people, and my city needs me. This is the last of us here in these lands, the Valley of Paradise. Armando motioned towards the city. Don't throw their lives away, Crash. They don't need to know the things we've been through to have salvation. You can grant them peace and a chance to live full lives. This is why I worked with them, to build this suit. They wanted me to wear it. I wasn't worthy. It nearly killed me. Faust only heard about the suit because I thought maybe... Armando trailed off. Crash aimed his weapon at Armando. The church became tense. The monks did not move or show any fear. It was as if this was a moment of judgment. They knew something Crash did not, so he put his weapon back down, but only to listen to the sounds of children playing. Crash began to walk outside the church and could see children playing a game with a leather ball. They were dancing around and being silly, making all sorts of noises. Tem responded with, "Does this seem familiar to you, Crassius?" "It reminds me of you, Timotheus, playing a game with me, knowing full well you were. Training me to be a weapon, you trained all of us as if you were our father and mentor. This is why Armando put you inside this suit. This was a ploy to tame me and make me do the goal's bidding all over again. But to see this, it almost feels worth it somehow. I just wanted a family. The Mercs provided that. The terrible things we did just to have each other. There was so much more to life than that. It was all we knew. War, violence. They won't have to know any of it, will they, Timotheus?" Crash felt a wave of emotions he thought he wasn't capable of feeling. Empathy, compassion, fear. The words of his father echoed in his mind again. Your emotions. They won't help you here. Use them and persevere. Crash nodded his head. He put his weapon away and walked back to the church. You said the girl dies when she puts on the suit. What if we merge the suits into me? Crash asked. The monks and I have worked on something that might be of use. But it's highly experimental. We have no idea if it even works. We figured a host is the problem, but what if the suit could be used remotely, to act on its own without a host? Armando motioned Crash to come close to the podium inside the church. There Armando revealed a jewel. This is a blood jewel, made from the Prophet's blood. As a matter of fact, it's from all the Prophet's bloodlines. It's all of their DNA wrapped inside a jewel. It acts as a beacon to locate the suits or pieces of them. They are not whole, but once they are, they will latch onto her, and she will become a weapon unlike anything you've ever seen. Greater than that suit we made for you. If you were able to fuse this jewel into your current suit now and collect the pieces, it's possible. But you probably won't survive this crash, because the suit has always taken from us to give us a fighting chance. Armando grimaced his face and handed it to Crash. Tem activated the suit's protocols and put the jewel in the center of Crash's suit. It began to slowly glow and surge. Crash felt a new power growing inside him. There is a catch. This jewel can open the gate, but it can always open something else. One of the monks spoke up. This jewel can awaken the Black Pope's master, and he will stop at nothing to retrieve this. The girl is naturally drawn to it. That is also why they kept her alive. She can lead them to their master, their god, and free him from his chains. If this happens, not even the Sons of Dawn would be a match for them. This jewel cannot fall into their hands. If you think for a moment you won't be able to do this, then you must self-destruct. The monk put his hood back on and stepped towards the windows of the church. He seemed to reflect on something, then placed his hand on the window. The Sons of Dawn, when they first came here, demanded sacrifices from us, thousands of years ago, and we would send them our daughters, women and children, whoever was deemed worthy. We didn't know they were searching for the bloodline even then. They never found it. They travelled the world far and wide, taking our families from us, taking their sacrifices. Then one day my people found this church. The writing spoke of a prophecy of a child who would bear the mark and smite down these false gods. When it finally came to pass, a child came. The suit was a piece of the Guardian. He'd come down from the heavens and bestowed it to his chosen people. We were to act on his behalf to stop them. He left us with the suit. Once the child had sent the Sons of Dawn to their demise, some had escaped. The child had sacrificed himself in our place. We are the last of the bloodline, but the guardian chooses who is worthy of the suit. When the child had passed, the suit split into several parts and vanished. Eventually history would repeat itself in our darkest hour and another would come to save us, but it never came. So we built a suit with the goals help ourselves. The suit is still out there somewhere, waiting for someone to bring it together and fight back against the darkness. That someone is you. The monk made a gesture and the rest of the monks followed him out of the church. Only Armando stood still with a glint in his eye, almost a tear. The monks began their chants, and it slowly faded into silence as they ventured out towards the city. Crash stood in front of Armando for what seemed like an eternity, neither saying a word. Armando laughed. "You know I'm still new at this, amigo. Can you imagine me, a monk? What did I get myself into? I have so much to learn, and still so do you." With that sentiment, Armando began to walk away as well. "Take the girl far from here, find the suit, use the jewel. Please, Crassius, save us from ourselves." With that, Armando followed the mad monks. The idea of saving anyone wasn't something Crash was used to. It was always the other way around. He didn't save lives, he took them. With the girl still in stasis, perhaps it was time he woke her up and found out who she really is. Can't exactly save someone if they aren't worth saving. Crash put on his helmet and walked outside the church. He engaged his leg thrusters and hurried to the ship. Once he was outside the main temple, the darkness was everywhere. The ships were still searching for the Stella. Relentless, he thought. The suns have no quit in them. Crash glided down the steps and moved deep into the jungle towards the cloaked Stella. The repairs have finally taken hold. It seems whatever the Suns are using, it's by design. To harm the nanomachines, they know who we are, and by now they've had time to prepare, which means the element of surprise is gone. But in my opinion, now would be a good time for a surprise attack of our own. Crash agreed with Tem, but first, where are they going to go next? We should leave the girl here and use the jewel to find the suit. If she's around when we find the suit, it might just attach to her instead of us. She'll be safe here. I can feel it. Crash readied the ship and went inside. When he got to the main deck, it began to glow. The Stella seemed pleased Crash was back. The girl was sound asleep in stasis. Time to wake her. Armando said we should take her. Crash, it doesn't look safe here at all. Those eagles up above are still searching for us, Tem said as Crash was waking her up. Then we give them a reason to think we left. If they think we still have her, then she's safe here. That city could use someone like her to liven the place up, don't you think? She's still a kid. Crash woke her up with just a touch on the forehead. Her eyes lit up and she stood on her feet. She soon realized this wasn't a dream and clutched the side of her makeshift cot. "What's going on? Who are you? Please don't hurt me, I just want to go home." The girl cried. She only appeared to be no older than 12 or 13. Crash rolled his eyes and thought to himself, she's definitely not going with them. "All right, kid, listen up. This is the Stella, and this is Tem." Crash pointed upwards to the hull of the ship. "I am Timotheus. We mean you no harm. We are in the Valley of Paradise. We are going to leave you in good care with some friends," Timotheus said in what appeared to be some kind of high-inflected voice. "Why does he sound like that?" the girl asked. "Just ignore him, kid. Here's the deal. Let's start with the basics. What's your name?" "Lani, Princess Lani." She looked less afraid, but Crash's appearance would frighten anyone. A large, dark-caped being barking orders would truly bring terror to any child's eyes. "It's so nice to meet you, Princess Lani," Tem said, sounding beaming and ecstatic. "All right, that's enough, Tem. She's a kid, not an infant, or did they not teach you that in Goal School?" Crash smirked. "Saddle up, kid. I'm going to carry you on my back and bring you into the temple with my friends. Then after that, they're going to play some kickball with you and hopefully make you a meal. 'Cause I can tell you right now, we don't have much on this ship." Crash motioned for her to come closer. She didn't. "It's all right, child. He means you no harm, but we must move quickly," Tem said, urgently. "Where is my family? I just want to go home," Lani said as her eyes began to water again. "We have been on the run from the Sons of Dawn. We don't think it's a good idea to Return you to your family, please. We need to go. Armando can tell you everything you need to know, Tem responded. Crash grabbed her up like a bag of ammo, then made a dash for the temple with her in his arms. The ships up above were still scanning, but for some strange reason they couldn't scan the temple. Was the temple hidden to their scanners? No matter, Crash thought, as he flew up the steps and back into the temple. Once inside, he turned the corridors and back the way they came. Once he hit the clearing, the city was still well lit, and the church was up ahead. Armando was walking back towards the city with his arms behind his back when Crash startled him. Here, take her. Me and Tem are going to distract the Suns. Keep your end of the deal. Armando, don't fail me. You know how to reach me. And just as fast as he came, Crash had flown back the way he came, with Armando holding a child in his arms. Hello? Armando said shyly. Put me down. Lani kicked out of Armando's arms and stormed into the church. I told him to take the girl. This is madness. Armando storms after her, and they can be heard shouting at one another for what seemed like 1,000 yards. The mad monks were coming up the path and heard their voices and carefully turned back around towards the city. Get in here now. You don't get to walk away from this. You're a part of this too. Armando shouted after the monks. They immediately began to run, laughing at Armando. The mad monks aren't foolish enough to watch after royalty. Crash made it back to the ship and uncloaked the Stella. They launched a few shots nearby at the mountains to let the Suns know they were trying to get away. They began to chase, but were no match for the Stella's speeds. As they sped up, the jewel began to pulse. The ship completely disappeared. As if time itself was bending around the Stella, it moved in ways even Tem hadn't comprehended. The Stella is bending time and moving at light speeds, but not like anything we've seen before. It must be the jewel Armando gave us. It's reacting to the ship. Tem sounded excited. I've never been on a ship quite like this, Tem. The Stella really is something. So, where? The hell is she going? Crash looked up at the ship's hull, awaiting an answer from Tem. She goes wherever the mission takes us, Crash. We've been through this, Tem replied. Yeah, but didn't Armando program this with the goals, so how do they know? Spirit, isn't that what Armando said? The power of spirit, Tem said. Oh, what the hell ever. Crash shook his head and climbed in the cockpit. He knew this was going to be a long journey, but at least he had a new purpose to put an end to this war, once and for all. Somewhere far into the reaches of space, hovering around the rings of Saturn, was a ship cloaked in darkness, draped in a special shielding to hide its signals, the comings and goings of information. Inside was a large ship with corridors within corridors, nearly empty but a few standing guards. Black roses armed to the teeth, wearing ceremonial garb, standing outside a large pantheon-shaped door. The ship was cut out of what appeared to be marble and mosaic tapestries. The ship acted as a vestibule. The room, when entered, was known as a narthex. Bestowed upon its floors was a blood-red marble. Flowing up its walls were paintings of death and decay, with savagery of a beast tearing flesh. These paintings stretched far and wide all over the room. In the middle was a throne, covered in gold and red resin in between its machinations, the avatar who took the darkness and its spirit. The Black Pope sits upon his throne, eyes closed, listening to the calls of his master, the echoes of space and the sounds of a beating hammer on a dark star. This was the ship of the Black Pope, sitting on the rings of Saturn. As the Black Pope's garbs were covered in what looked like gold tatters, with a long fish-like helmet going straight up into the hull, a reminder of the old gods. His eyes opened, a sickened look upon his face, wrinkles from his 800-year reign, and still the leader of the Black Roses. He sits upon his mighty throne, listening to his master's call. Then he hears it. For the first time in 200 years, he hears him. It is time. Grant me a vessel, so that I may tear upon the flesh of the sons of dawn. Their reign is over. Mine starts now. The Black Pope heard his master's message loud and clear and stood up. He motioned for the doors. They burst open. Bring him to me now, he said as his master's avatar. Then in that moment a large being came through the door, covered in augments and a large duster. The being bent his knee. You summoned me? Faust said, smiling. The Black Pope smiled back.